Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this CIM webinar, where we'll be looking at how to market a city with strategy, storytelling, and soul. Before we get started, I'll just give you a little bit of information on how to get maximum value from today's session. So today's session will last approximately 30 minutes with a 10 to 15 minute Q&A at the end. And you'll be able to send in your questions for that Q&A at any time during the webinar via the questions icon on your user display. And we'll address as many of your questions as we can at the end of this panel discussion. And just a little reminder that today's webinar is being recorded and will be available to watch on demand after the session. For the best viewing experience, we recommend joining via a web browser or the GoToWebinar app. And should you experience any technical issues during the broadcast, such as loss of sound or the connection drops, then we recommend you log out of the session and then log back in again. So, Rachel, if you would like to turn your webcam on, I'll hand things over to you to start when you're ready to introduce today's session and our speakers.
Thank you, Pippa. Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar. I'm Rachel Simpson. I'm the Vice Chair of Events on the CIM Yorkshire Committee. I'll be guiding you through today's session. So thanks for joining us, whether you're tuning in from Yorkshire, elsewhere, or anywhere else in the world. We're here today to talk about something that we don't often get to explore in traditional marketing conversations. We're talking about what it takes to build the brand of an entire city. Not a product or a campaign, but a place with all its contradictions, communities, and character. We'll be talking about brand building, legacy, engagement, lessons learned, and what marketers working at any scale can take away from it all. So we're focusing our attention on two amazing Yorkshire cities. First up, we've got Bradford, who are currently enjoying the spotlight as UK City of Culture 2025. Then we've got Hull, who are going to be reflecting on the legacy of its own title from 2017. So today's conversation is going to be about honesty, insight, and reflection. What worked, what didn't, what surprised us, and what we're still figuring out. So we're keeping it relaxed, conversational, and full of practical takeaways. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce our amazing speakers. First up, we've got Anthony Yates. Anthony is the Destination Manager at Visit Hull and East Yorkshire. Anthony, could you please turn on your camera? Hi there, Anthony. So Anthony was part of the bid, setup and delivery team for Hull's year as the UK City of Culture in 2017. And his career to date has seen him shape national tourism policy, deliver global marketing initiatives and develop visitor-based skills programmes. Welcome, Anthony. Next up, we have Rhiannon Hannon, Director of Creative Engagement and Participation at Bradford 2025 UK City of Culture. Rhiannon, would you be able to turn on your camera, please?
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Rhiannon. Hi. So Rhiannon is leading the participation programme currently with communities and young people. Her previous experience includes 13 years at Theatre Royal Wakefield as Associate Director of Participation and a Theatre Director at Mind the Gap. Welcome, Rhiannon. And finally, we have Janina Munday, also joining us from Bradford City of Culture. She is the Director of Audiences. She's responsible for leading the brand, marketing and digital strategy to develop and grow local, national and international audiences. Her background includes various senior roles within venues, festivals and touring companies, including the Northern Ballet, Birmingham Royal Ballet and the Lowry. Welcome, Janina. Please turn on your camera. Hi, Janina.
Hi, Rachel. Good to see you.
Fantastic. So today's conversation is a panel type discussion, Q&A. So we're going to be having various different discussion topics and prompts. So the first one that I'd like to start with is really setting the scene, setting the big picture and marketing a city as a brand. So Anthony, let's start with the big question. For Hull 2017, when you were handed a once-in-a-generation cultural moment, where do you even begin? And what's the first move in marketing a whole city?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. I think the answer partly to the question starts before we actually awarded the City of Culture status. We needed plan A or plan B. We only found out that we were successful with the bid at the same time that everybody else did when it was announced by Maria Miller on Breakfast TV. So having plan A, are we successful? Are we plan B? Are we not? And what those courses of action need to take in terms of how the city projects itself. Thankfully, of course, we were successful. And that sets up a number of different complex processes that we needed to go through. Not everybody necessarily understood what UK City of Culture was. In 2017, Hull was the only second city in the UK to be awarded the status. And that's really all it was, a status. So we had to do a lot of work on the hearts and minds of the residents and the communities and shift a little bit of that empathy. What does City of Culture mean for us and our communities? So that was a starting point really for the first 12 months in terms of changing that perception locally. But also the audiences that we've got to work with are from communities through to stakeholders, through to central government, through to international parties and partnerships. There was a lot of different communications, brand positioning, and what it is it meant for us as a city. So we had to be quite flexible, and it did flex over the 3 years that we had to work with, from being announced to it going live on the 1st of January 2017. Because fundamentally, when you put the bid in, you don't actually put what the programme is going to be. You put about what 2017 can do for communities and do for the city. But of course, everybody wants to know, what is it going to do and what's going to happen on day one? Thank you.
I mean, I think that's quite an interesting one, isn't it? Because, you know, obviously, when it comes to shaping a narrative and you talk about sort of changing people's hearts and minds or influencing that, a lot of it comes down to sort of classic stakeholder mapping, doesn't it? And looking at the different stakeholders involved and the different messaging streams. So did you have different narratives that were shaping the whole campaign? And how did you sort of actually manage to execute that?
Yeah, so there's many different stakeholders. Obviously, leading up to the bid, it's very much working with our cultural community, because fundamentally it is a city bid. It's not a city council bid, so it's got to be of the city. So reaching out to our neighbourhoods and communities so they could help shape that, and then percolate the benefits of what City of Culture can do for them and in their communities is very important for us. And then maintaining that collaboration of council, stakeholders, residents and communities to build this momentum through social media, different messages as time moved on and moved closer to City of Culture was completely imperative in us achieving our goals.
And I think that's probably something that you're experiencing too, Janina and Rhiannon, with Bradford. I mean, I think as you're sort of responsible for the audience piece, Janina, are you finding that is it a bit of a challenge balancing storytelling at scale and then sort of then doing sort of the hyperlocal engagement? How are you managing that at the moment?
Yeah, and I just actually want to say something on it's really interesting what Anthony said then actually about winning the hearts and minds after the bid, because I think Hull was so successful in that. I think it helped future bids, because I don't know if you agree, Rhiannon, but I think what I really noticed, I'm not from Bradford, but what I remember seeing Bradford win the bid, and what I really felt was the city and the people were so behind that. It was quite incredible. I found it quite emotional to watch, seeing everybody on the news cheering, and I think that was something that the effect of Hull did, because I think people realised what it could do for their city. And in terms of the narrative and the storytelling, I think for me, when I saw that, what was really important for me was to keep hold of it.
Yeah.
And what's always run through everything that I've tried to do with the narrative and storytelling is around people and being really people powered and using the city. And that was really at the heart of when we started working on our brand. And that part of it was really, really crucial. Rhiannon, is there anything you want to add to that? Who is from Bradford, by the way, so I was really living it.
Yeah, I've lived in Bradford and worked in Bradford and elsewhere in Yorkshire for over 20 years. But I do think there was going back to the drawing board and really trying to understand what Bradford as a place was kind of going through and where it was at that moment in time. And I think for viewers that might not know Bradford, it's worth saying a little bit more about Bradford itself, which is a very young district. This really informs the narratives that Janina and the team have been working on. So 25.7% of the residents are under 18. It's a really diverse district, and 33% of residents are non-white British, and with 150 languages spoken. It's also a really rural district, so we've got over 70% of the district is rural. So those things felt really key in kind of trying to build those narratives, and quite being very kind of asset based around how we approached the beautiful city and district that is Bradford. And yeah, like Anthony said, there's this bid process and period where the team builds a real kind of head of steam with the communities, and in Bradford that looked like kind of consultation with over 7,000 people at the bid stage, 1,700 resident surveys, and actually people were really engaged then. But it's worth saying there's a gap, isn't there, Janina? And there's a gap between the team that built the bid and then a new team being built to deliver the programme. And actually there's kind of really trying to, I think the first process is really trying to understand and embed all of the brilliant stuff that's come through the bid process. And then build a story of change out of all of those key areas.
How do you sort of thread a consistent narrative through all of that? Because from both cases, you can see that you're balancing a lot. So stakeholders, you're balancing legacy, you're balancing the fact that both cities have had some negative sort of connotations and sort of stereotypes around them. You've then got, particularly with Bradford, it's a melting pot. It's an incredibly diverse, amazing city. You know, I grew up very close to Bradford and spent a lot of time there too. So how do you sort of thread that consistency throughout it whilst also tailoring it to specific audiences?
Should I answer that? I think, oh, Anthony, do you want to say something?
I was going to say, it's got to be real, it's got to be honest, it's got to be of the place. It's that simple. It's got to tell the story of the place, what it's been, what it is, and what it could be. And that really brings it to life in a cultural, artistic way. That's really it from I think, a city culture point of view. It needs to resonate of the place and let the place amplify itself out nationally, internationally, and that really is the brand. The brand has always been there. We're just elevating it.
You've literally just took the words out of my mouth. That was exactly what I was going to say. When we did our brand exercise at the beginning, before we were saying all our brand values and then design, etc., that was the main thing. We said we're not going to put any veneer on this. This is what it is. This is Bradford, and we want to really shout about it, because you're right, it's there. It's just over the last few years things have happened and people have perceptions, but what we really want to do, and it goes back to being people powered, people make a city, so it has to be about them. And I think because of the way we programmed the events, that was running through it as well. So it was very much about the city, it was very much about the program. And Rihanna can speak more to this in terms of a lot of the work we did has so many participants in, so they were experiencing it live as well.
Yeah, exactly that.
I think that's a good one. No, Rhiannon, I think that's a great one, because I think when it comes to partnerships, obviously that's a big part of what you're doing. So sort of media, sponsors, local schools, local communities, how, who, what is helping you bring all of this together in terms of partnerships? Yeah,
I mean, we've got a huge number of partners. And I think my main stakeholders are probably the people of Bradford, and actually that's really important for me in my role to keep that very much at the core. But actually we kind of have strategic engagement partners that help us ensure that our message are kind of shared with the people of Bradford that might not normally be kind of taking part in traditional cultural activity. So the Children and Families Trust in Bradford have been fundamental, the family hubs, the council, libraries, NHS, Mind, just to name a few. But I think one of the things that we did very early on was to build our own connections across the district by employing myself in my team, we developed a program called Our Patch, which is a big, large-scale community engagement program that allowed us to invest in a producer in each of the areas of Bradford and a team of about 50 to 60 people developing culture at a local level. So working with community organisations, really small-scale organisations, and building culture around the district and working with people, finding out what people wanted to build and create. And then on Janina's team, a team of 10 networkers who are people who allow us to share messages through trusted people and organisations. That could be people who are kind of well known in a particular area or trusted members of communities of interest as well. I'll pause there, but I think my kind of key stakeholders and partners, if you like, are those community organisations that help us gain traction with the people of Bradford.
Yeah.
If I could, Rachel, as well, on top of that, I think it's not necessarily about brand, but maybe it's about message and visibility and optics, and taking outside the communities and at a local level. But there's very much that confidence that the city can articulate that it can deliver at scale, and it's got confidence in its future activities as well. You said earlier that sometimes the cities previously may have had a little bit of knocking in the press and such like. So for this to elevate and give us that confidence, and to be able to continue to bid for things that we may not have done, but also have the recipients of those bids say, well, actually, yeah, they can do this, they can deliver at scale. It's just another nuance of how the city or cities move on in a positioning sense, maybe more than a brand sense, but I don't think it should be overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of this is sort of thinking to me, you know, you're covering pretty much all of the 7 P's of marketing, and you've got you're spinning lots of plates. But I think messaging and positioning is super key here, particularly when, you know, given the fact that, like we say, there's sometimes socioeconomic and social mobility issues that have been highlighted in the media, and I think a lot of that can have a lot of emotional resonance with the residents. So how do you sort of focus on the goals of the campaign? And maybe over to you, Rhiannon, for this one. But just in terms of, do you communicate different goals to different communities in terms of what they're going to get out of being Bradford City of Culture, whether it's sort of job creation, more opportunities in education, in business, entrepreneurship, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I will take that and use the opportunity to mention kind of our work with schools, really, because that's there is no way of developing a more equitable piece of work than ensuring there's access to cultural activity through all of the schools in Bradford. So it felt like a really key place for us to start. And actually, I'd probably just focus at the moment on, like, our story of change is a piece of work that we developed out of the bid, but allows us to focus on, and myself and Janina frequently remind ourselves and each other, like, let's bring it back to the story of change. So in the story of change, we talk about culture being more available and accessible across the district. In my mind, one of the key sort of strategic elements of that is to really broaden the definition of culture for people. So we always talk about, through all of our campaigns, all of our social media, we focus on a really broad range of culture. And for people in Bradford, we learned from the bid that, like, some of the most exciting bits of culture are not like your core interpretation of culture, like theatre or visual arts. There'd be, we talk a lot about food, family, fashion, faith, fun, and this broad encapsulating sense of culture. And hopefully, if you look at any of our brilliant work by our audiences team, that feels really, really vivid and really clear. And we use that to talk to our audiences. So we did a big campaign when we were recruiting our practitioners, making sure that they know they don't have to be traditional theatre practitioners, etc. as well. So talking to schools, making sure we're broad in our relationship with culture. And also, yeah, really making sure that we're developing the cultural sector, and we're giving loads of opportunities to the Bradford cultural sector, as well as bringing in national and international. But I'll pause there. Thank you.
I think that's incredible, and I think a lot of, you know, there's so much emphasis that's put on particularly like finance and tech within the Yorkshire region, Leeds becoming quite a hub for creative digital technology, when actually culture is what brings everybody together, isn't it? And it creates that sense of pride. So it's incredible, you know, seeing the work that both cities have done. I think on that, if we move to some of the campaign highlights and lessons learned, and I know that, Anthony, this may be easier for you to answer purely because it's sort of something that you've done and you've checked that off, and I know you're still involved. So looking back, what was a sort of a real yes, this is working and we're, you know, it's resonating with people? What was a sort of a key moment for you?
I think that's probably quite easy for me to answer. I think it was that first week of January 2017 where Martin Green, who was the chief executive of the culture company in Hull, put on a great light show in Queen Victoria Square, international renowned producer. And it actually told the story of the city to the city's residents, really. So it started talking about all the shipping history, the maritime history, I should say, time in the Second World War and what the city went through there, how Hull Fair comes every year along, etc., etc., etc. And it was a wash around the four sides of Queen Victoria Square with fantastic music, fantastic lights, telling this narrative of the city. And residents and visitors came to watch it in droves, and there wasn't a dry eye through any of those performances because it really captured the sense of the place. And all that apathy that I mentioned earlier that may have been there before was completely wiped away in that single week, and that really brought everybody along the journey. So yeah, that's
lovely.
It really sort of hit home. We have made something quite special here, yeah, for sure.
You can see and feel the emotion. And has there been a similar moment for yourselves? I mean, I know that you're still undergoing the year. The year's not over yet, but has there been a point where you've seen and felt that emotion?
You know what, I've been thinking about this a lot, because when you're in it, I don't know how you felt, Anthony, it's really hard to think that. And it's great when you've got people from the outside going, oh my God, it looks like it's going so well. And you're like, oh, great. But I think thinking about it, and it's hard to think past them back sometimes, but exactly that, especially before the year started, because I think that but was all saying that in between bit, people are desperate to know what happens, and what you're doing is you're recruiting staff and writing strategies and all that. And then you have your opening event and 20,000 people come, and it sells out, and you feel this power, and mainly of Bradfordians, seeing their life in front of them unfolding and in front of them in this cultural event. That's really powerful. But then also throughout the year, there's little moments which could, from a marketing point of view, you know, so obviously people coming to see things and having a great time, but then also the fact that the 23 million people have seen all the things that we've been putting on the BBC, and the BBC have been showcasing us on the One Show, and they've been bringing the Antiques Roadshow here. So for me to be able to highlight Bradford to all those people is a real highlight and a success. The fact that LNER this year have increased their trains 5 days, five a day to Bradford. So just little things like that, when you can see things changing gradually. And I think one of the main things as well is just the sentiment is changing. So rather than at the beginning of the year and last year, where there was a bit more negativity across our socials in the media, there's a definite shift. And what I'm starting to see is people are really fighting back and saying, hold on a minute, don't say that. You know, this has been, you know, and not just about Bradford 2025, but about Bradford. And that for me is one of the real positivities. Yeah, so they're constantly happening throughout the year, actually. So I just have to keep reminding myself.
I love that. And you and Rhiannon did talk about your sort of strategy of change, didn't you? And I think a big part of this sort of cultural moment is demonstrating that a city does change. So demonstrating the legacy, you know, Bradford's textile heritage in manufacturing, and then through the waves of different generations and different cultures and nationalities that make up modern Bradford, and seeing that pride of place and making it a destination for people, you know, a destination for restaurants, theatre, nightlife, cultural events, all of that. And we have seen that. We have seen that Bradford is successfully doing it. But But what would you, question for you and Rhiannon again, and excuse me, tickly coughs coming back. Obviously you're in the middle of it, but what are you hoping that the lasting legacy is going to be?
Yeah, I'll happy to jump in it, and we are in the middle of all of that at the moment, very much so, it's worth saying. But I think we're kind of, for my team, we're looking at how those partnerships that we've developed and worked hard on can create and thrive in Bradford. So where, for example, we've worked with national partners like the Royal Ballet and Opera, how they can see that Bradford is a really exciting place to continue working and help keep it a compelling and exciting place to work. We're also, a lot of our work is working with the brilliant Bradford Producing Hub, upskilling local practitioners in socially engaged practice. We're working with the local community organisations to make sure that they can envision what they want for the future in terms of creative practice on their doorstep, and helping them make that come to fruition. We're also working hard to make sure that we've got young people at the centre of our work, and built into that is the lasting legacy. So over a 7th or 17% of our staff are young people who are in paid work positions with us through a range of different programs. So and that's 50% of those are from a global majority background. So there's a real inbuilt legacy there, which we know will continue, and there's a lot around keeping those young people in Bradford and ensuring it stays an exciting and compelling place to live and work as well. Do you want to say a little bit more, Janina?
I think the young people is really key, isn't it, and trying to get people to stay in their own city. But I think, you know, Bradford becoming the cultural destination, continuing to be that, and more people coming to the city centre, I think that would be really key for me. Yeah.
Well, for sort of the shopping, the nightlife, the culture.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the. I mean, I don't know if we mentioned this before, but at the beginning, we're a district-wide UK City of Culture, which is the first time that's been done, which makes it so rather than having all our events in the city centre, we're crossing all the district. So and you can see throughout that which bits of Bradford are a real cultural destination already. You know, we have Haworth with the Brontes, we've got Hockney and the Salts Mills. So I think just ensuring that people are crossing across the district and coming to visit as a cultural destination, hopefully that will continue.
Fantastic. And Anthony, just from Hull's perspective, what would legacy mean in the context of Hull? Because I know that you are still engaged in sort of shaping a 5-year strategy for the area, but you know, how do you sustain that energy after that year has passed?
Yeah, I think legacy manifests itself in many different guises. I think from investment into the city, that's continued. We've got a brand new city centre in terms of a new public realm that was put in just pre-2017. That was a 5-year project that would have normally taken 5 years, condensed into virtually 18 months. So it's a brand new built city centre, new hotels, a new arena. So there's very much an investment and physical build element of legacy. I come back to that word confidence. I think the city's confident now. I think that's in terms of being able to go forward in cultural ambitions. We've got, like you say, we've got a new cultural heritage strategy we've launched earlier this week, 2025 through to 2030. And the arts and cultural organisations that we're working with in the communities, in the city centre, and also exporting some of that cultural and arts development products out of the city. So legacy's very wide, I would argue. One of the best legacy programmes that we still continue to deliver, particularly coffee's catching, is the Hay Volunteer Programme, or the volunteer programme that was set up in 2016 to support our year of culture. And that really brought in 2,400 volunteers throughout the year. And that's sustained, it's sustained through COVID, and it's active now, and brings communities of all different ages into the arts, culture, heritage and tourism sector, and they are absolutely fantastic. So if anyone's watching, I'd take my hat off to you, but that is really legacy.
Yeah, definitely. Seeing that continue beyond that initial year, because you know it's about keeping the momentum, isn't it? And I think that sort of segues nicely on, because at this stage we do have a 15-minute Q&A. So I can see that there's sort of, as we speak, there's been questions coming in from the audience. So I would love to throw some of these out to you all. Feel free to just jump in if you urgently want to answer them. So question one is, when trying to build a soulful brand identity, what was the most successful technique you used to move the narrative from like an official city message to a story that was genuinely owned and amplified by locals and community members? It's a great question. Who would like one?
It was really interesting for us because I don't know how it worked for you, Anthony, but we had, with the bid, there was a brand. And like I said, it was really owned by the people. So when we then came and we decided we want to, adapt that and rebrand, that was really tricky because people really felt like they owned that brand already. Do you remember, Rhiannon? I had a lot of meetings with councillors and, people, communities who have been involved, explaining why we were changing it. But what we really did was bring them on board. And I think the narrative for me was using that year in 2024 when we launched a new brand to really, again, talk about Bradford and the people. So the brand that we had, it was, we've got 3 really strong colours. There's the green, which is representative of the rural landscape of Bradford, and the moss and that diversity. And then you've got the amber, which is representative of the beautiful buildings with the glow. I don't know if you've been to Bradford, but the buildings are incredible. And when the sun comes down, there's this like orange glow, but also Bradford City Football Club, that amber in their kit. I have never been to a city where they feel so passionate about the football. Sorry, Anthony, I don't know if that's. And then we've got the pink, which is the sort of radical quirkiness of Bradford. So it really worked in the end, but I think that allowed us to really, and then we've got, and it was turned into like the heart, so the heart of Bradford. So that year we used that brand to really talk about Bradford and its people, and we use lots of different phrases like it's our term, be bold, be Bradford, or be Bradford, be bold. So that was the sort of narrative then. But what was really great about that brand, we worked with the agency, we were able to adapt it constantly. And then when we launched the program in September, that's where it sort of shifted a little bit. But what we also did was work with Shanaz, the creative director, on doing a big brand campaign around the district, which was sat side by side with a commission, which was a photographer taking photographs of local people. So again, the brand was sitting next to the people. So that was my constant narrative running through, but it was changing gradually. And then when we came to January, it shifted again about events, but then thinking about the people that were in those events.
Fantastic, great answer. We've got one that's come through for Anthony. So for Hull, do you think the City of Culture helped initiate the recent booming filming in Hull for movies and television?
Yeah, I think it did. I think it opened up a lot of discussions in a number of different places, particularly with creatives. When we had I think it might have been BBC, a lot of the producers came up, saw the city. We have been proactive from a creative industry's point of view in trying to attract film, use the city as a film location city, right. Which I think we've been really quite successful through since City of Culture, and there are other ones in the pipeline coming. I think it opened the door and opened conversations for the city to be able to position itself within that sector as a film location. It's shifted our internal structure slightly in terms of what our offer and our proposition is to film producers, and what our ambition is going forward in terms of making that more robust, so we can attract more, but also develop the sector locally. We were talking earlier with Jeannie about keeping talent in the city. Well, that's very much what we want to do in terms of that broader sector. So it's producers, it's actors, it's set designers, etc., 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 of the city, in the city, and for the city again. So the answer is yes. I'll try to broaden it out a little bit if that helps.
I love that though, because I saw a stat in the news the other day, and I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was something like X% of our GDP as a nation would improve if sort of we stopped focusing so much on London as a destination for jobs, for example. And I think the UK City of Culture initiative is a great way of putting other cities on the map, ones that haven't been thought of before. And, you know, we've seen it with Glasgow, where, you know, they are a film location. There's been a number of films filmed there because it mirrors this, it looks a little bit like New York from some angles if you squint. But, you know, it's enabling a broader audience to come to the city. One for Janina and Rhiannon. Just let me know which one of you wants to answer this. So for Bradford, are there any interesting examples of representing events in some of the different languages that have been spoken across the city?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that. Quite a lot of our large-scale events will use multiple languages, which I think has worked really well for us. So Rise, which Janine mentioned earlier, which was our opening event that happened in January outside, and 10,000 people came both nights. There was this really beautiful spoken word element there, and that was then Patwari, which is language that is often less well represented, even though a lot of people in Bradford speak it. Was then we worked with a spoken word performer who then interpreted and spoke the spoken word piece in Patwari as well. We've used a range of interpretation techniques across multiple programs as well. Janina, I don't know if there's any you want to add in particular.
I mean, really, we're always trying to think about it as well without like going back to our networkers as well. So working really closely, just as well as putting things in the program, but working really closely when we're out in the community to think about how we. So the networkers that we have, the 10 networkers, are really representative of the people of Bradford. We really made sure about that. So they will speak different languages, and they're really great at advising us of how we can communicate and how we can simplify language and how maybe where we need to translate language and things like that. So we've been working really closely with them on the comms side of things as well.
Fantastic. And another great question. So would you say that it would be a good exercise for any town or city to work on marketing themselves, even if it's not for the City of Culture Award, just for the sake of, you know, putting the city on the map as a destination? Anthony, do you want to maybe answer that one?
Yeah, I thank you. I will. I do. I think you've got to be, your aspirations need to be at the right level. But in terms of what marketing a place, be it a market town, be it a town, be it a city, what that can do for, we talk about community a lot, but it does give self-confidence, it does give pride of place. But equally, if you get it right, it does provide economic benefit, it does provide jobs, and it does provide inspiration. You know, yes, I do, but you've got to be realistic in terms of what you can achieve depending on what level and scale you are.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that again will depend on the resource, won't it? Because you know the teams that you all work in are pretty good sized, aren't they? I don't know whether you could maybe reference how big your teams are, but I think maybe for other cities, if they are planning to do an exercise like this for the sake of marketing the city, it might be good to sort of indicate what type of roles and resources they need. Maybe one for Janina and Rhiannon.
I mean, what I was just going to comment on, I think it can't be done in isolation, though. It's got to be collaborative. It's got to be collaborative with external organisations. So whether it's the council, whether it's other arts organisations, because I mean, it's so difficult to compare because you know, a UK City of Culture is you hit the ground running and you have to get a team that is, yeah, it will be larger than you would have somewhere else. It's difficult to say how many people, but I mean, if you've got that one person who's got the inclination and the initiative and can bring other people together, I'd say that's where it can work the best sometimes.
Yeah. Finding somebody who's got that sort of drive, initiative, that resourcefulness to bring different people
and
together.
Whether that's someone from the local council, whether it's someone from like the Visit, the tourism board, whether it's another organisation, another cultural organisation, that's where I'm thinking about other places that I've worked as well. That's where I think it's always worked best, when you come together and do it together.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to some of these questions as well, there's some about examples from residents, you know, like what have residents told you that they're most proud of that's actually surprised you a little bit? Maybe one for you, Rhiannon.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say one thing that came out really clearly in our household survey about what people, I think it was quite an open question. I'm trying to remember the exact word. It was something like, what do you most want to get from a city of culture, or what are you most likely to take part in? And people said they wanted something just where they were, very local to them. And actually, we've developed a lot of work based on that very specific request, essentially.
Right.
So our patch, which was the program I mentioned earlier, but I'll also just mention Beacon, which was it's just closed last week, and I'm still a bit sad. But it was a travelling pop-up performance venue for a couple of hundred people that went to 4 parks in Bradford, where there are not normally cultural venues as such, and it had lots of takeovers by community groups, and it really got local people coming to it. It had a load of stuff both inside and outside. There was climbing walls, alpacas, free ice cream, getting people to come along, and then the month following its sort of residency at each of the parks, daily, loads of activities, drop-in, participatory stuff. And it really did seem to get kind of a sense of pride from people, but also just like surprising ones. We did an amazing performance of the Railway Children, and for our recruitment for that, over 1,000 young people applied to be in the community cast. And we just thought, wow, there's such, I mean, young people really do often participate before they are audiences for things as well. So actually, from my point of view, having those sort of really big participation opportunities has meant there's been this real sense of pride across the whole program.
I love that. And I think a lot of this, when it comes to sort of pride, it's about how do you retain that legacy. And I know we've touched upon that already, but one of the questions that's coming in from the audience is about lasting legacy. And I think question for all of you is, for both Hull and Bradford, what do you want both cities to be known for as we go forward from both of these events? Maybe over to you first, Anthony, and then we can go to Rhiannon and Janina.
Sorry, just trying to get my mic on.
Okay.
Is that in one sentence? Because quite a few things, I think. I mean, it sounds quite twee, but a cultural city, which it always has been established, but actually something that is growing from out of the city, and that residents can engage with and participate in at a cultural level. And that's cultural strategy is very much delivering that through the action plan that we launched earlier in the year. I think also I come back to that word confidence. I think and the confidence that we can deliver, that's something really quite important for us in terms of legacy.
Yeah.
The objective of government have confidence in the city, that they can invest in the city. And that comes back to my final point, is that the confidence of investors into the city to keep that trajectory of place development continuing. So that's maybe office, F&B, hospitality, etc. So place changing story is part of that legacy, because it's really born out of 2017, and a lot of hard work by officers and private sector.
Yeah.
But I do think that was the catalyst of change in the city centre and on the periphery in the neighbourhoods as well. It's quite a broad set of outcomes.
So confidence is the key theme there, isn't it? Confidence across residents, confidence in business investment, economy. Would you say that resonates with yourselves, Janina and Rhiannon, in terms of the lasting legacy that you want to see for the city of Bradford? Yeah,
confidence. I described that for Bradfordians as like knowing itself better is a phrase we use quite a bit. Like, Bradford's quite radical. I think for me, it's like Bradford is radical, proud. It's not shiny in this sort of traditional sense. So I think, and it's beautiful. And I think actually Bradford knowing itself better feels like that sort of sense of pride, knowing what we are and what we aren't. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Owning that uniqueness. I think that's really sage advice for all of us. Is just know who you are with it. So we're going to have to wrap up because we've got 39 seconds left, and go to webinar will just cut us off. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to our panel. It's been an absolute privilege hearing your advice and insights and your stories so far, and really just learning more about pride and consistency and confidence. So thank you so much. And we're going to hand back over to Pippa to do a quick outro. So thanks everybody. You can now turn off your cameras. You can relax now. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you once again to Rachel and our panel today, Anthony, Janina and Rhiannon. This was a fascinating topic and a fascinating discussion. So thank you once again. And for our listeners in the Yorkshire region, we just wanted to mention that we have an exciting event coming up at the Ambler Club in Leeds on the 5th of November, where we'll be unpacking how job titles like head of marketing, marketing director, and even CMO can mean very different things in different organisations. And we'll explore how a blend of experience, opportunity, and lifelong learning, not always formal qualifications, often shapes the most successful careers in marketing. And for our international audiences, you can head over to cim.co.uk/CIM-networks to find out more about our international networks, events, and how you can connect with marketers in your region. But unfortunately, that's all we have time for today, and we really value your help in shaping our future content. So as you leave the webinar, a brief survey will pop up, and we'd be very grateful if you could take a moment to fill it out. Your feedback really does make a real difference. So on behalf of CIM, a big thank you again to our host, Rachel, and the panelists. And once again, most of all, to everyone for attending today. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon.